If you're kind of like me, you have at one point in your life tried to move your friends over to another messenger that is more secure and more private than mainstream messengers. In this video, I kind of want to talk about why that doesn't work most of the time. So why you can't move your friends to another messenger. And I think the first most obvious reason for this is that normie messengers are quote-unquote better. And they are better in a technical aspect, meaning they are better because of, for example, the network effect. They are better because more people use them. But they're also better in like actual technicality, in the sense that if you look at big companies, they have a lot of resources and a lot of people working on these messengers, so they can implement more features, they can optimize better, they can fix bugs better, and so on and so forth. So with scale, everything technically improves. What is not part of this aspect of technicality is, of course, privacy, but also in some sense security. Even though you can, of course, debate the security aspect. And, of course, another big point is control. Because if you use normie messengers, so messengers provided by big companies, you, by definition, don't have control. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? So what I mean when I say normie messengers are better, quote unquote, what I mean is only technical aspects which the end user of the software actually can see and actually experience, only these matter in this kind of normie mainstream worldview. So a feature is something you can use. If you think about privacy, that's not a real, that's not a thing you as the user can experience. You don't experience the company saving all your data and analyzing it. You may experience that with, I don't know, personalized advertisement, for example. But again, this is not really part of like the messenger itself. So this is not a technical aspect in this sense. So, and your friends, if they are kind of in this mainstream kind of worldview, will argue with that. Well, Telegram and Signal and WhatsApp, they're just better. More people use them. They have more features, this and that. So one point is really that normie messengers are in this sense better. Of course, not when it comes to privacy. I mean, of course, we know that. And I think the more important point is that your friends don't share your worldview in this regard. Because if they argue something like, well, Telegram is better because it has more features and whatnot, they don't, and you don't agree with that, that's like a difference in worldview, I would say. I mean, you can call it principles, you can call it whatever, what you value or whatnot. But in this, I call it worldview because the worldview of people who don't really care about this stuff is fundamentally different, I would argue. Because while you care about your privacy and stuff like that, you don't want to be surveilled, you don't want to live in a surveillance state or surveillance world where everything you do is recorded and saved forever and analyzed for optimization or whatnot, or to manipulate you via propaganda or advertising and stuff like that. They don't really care. This is why they just use whatever. And of course, this is not only constrained to messengers, but like social media in general. And I mean, and again, I have had this happen a lot of times. They might try your xmpp or matrix or whatever like alternate messenger you kind of want them to use or you think would be nice to use, and they might try it, but there will be, at least in my experience, a lot of reluctance. Oftentimes, not always, but a lot of reluctance in the sense that when something breaks, when something doesn't work as expected, when some feature is missing, they will instantly say, well, I mean, yeah, it's just not as good. Like they already have their predefined answer in their head and they try it out, sure, but as soon as they get like the slightest amount of validation for their opinion and for their worldview, they will bail or they will tell you, well, I mean, it's just not working out and stuff like that. And I think this is even more pronounced in like groups, so group chats. Migrating group chats over to like a different messenger is in my experience impossible. But then again, group chats are like a plague anyways. But that's a different topic, I think. And then the question you have to ask is, of course, are they even your friends? Or is someone who's not willing to install a different messenger and use that to communicate with you, is that your friend? And I would say no. Because like installing, using a messenger, that's not a deal. Like that's not a big deal. Like, not at all. It's like the most trivial thing in the world, I think. And not even for like people who are into like free software and whatnot, but for like normies. I mean, they install a dozen apps on their phones every day, don't they? So why not Conversations or Element or Briar or whatever? So yeah, I mean, this is really, I think, the fundamental question which it boils down to. And I think in a lot of cases, you have to kind of say no. I mean, oftentimes they are, at least in my life, I have had acquaintances, you could call them, but like not really, I wouldn't really call them my friends, like in retrospect, that is. Because again, they didn't share my worldview, like at all, in this regard. And again, you might say, well, I mean, they also care about privacy and whatnot, but it's a difference if someone quote unquote cares about privacy, but that's the only thing they do. They say they have an opinion and so on, or if someone is actually willing to do something about it, like if they are willing to act. This is a big difference. And I would put that all into the category or under the term worldview. So it's not about, well, I know these big companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft and whatever, they are collecting my data and so on and so forth. I mean, we all know that. And well, this is a bad trend and blah, blah. And well, there's this petition we should all sign and whatnot. Or if you're actually willing to take responsibility and say, okay, I don't want to have my data harvested by these big companies. So I'm going to do something about it. Or I'm going to do the best I can. And that includes, of course, using a non-mainstream messenger that you control and so on and so forth. So that is, in effect, self-hosted. Or at least of such a nature that it kind of circumvents all the normal problems. So with Briar, I don't think you can self-host Briar because it's like peer-to-peer, but then it, of course, circumvents all the normal problems with like server-side surveillance and whatnot. So, and the solution to this is, I think, as follows. And you can think of multiple possible solutions, but I think only one is correct. So the normal solution, people in free software and stuff like that, people who care about their privacy and so on and so forth, is to, well, just have a better messenger. Just try to compete with these big mainstream companies. So, and I think two good examples for this are Signal on the one hand and Matrix, so the Matrix protocol on the other. And I think this is an approach that is doomed to fail in the end, because it's not about the programmatic interface features of messengers that make them great, but it's more about the network effect. I think this is the most important part. So who is actually using this? Because it's about communicating with someone. That's the whole point of this software, isn't it? So, and if no one's using it, well, then it's really like, I mean, it can have all the greatest like features and bells and whistles and whatnot, and it can do this and that, but it's really like, if no one's using it, like, who cares? So you can, of course, argue, well, then we just need to get more people using it. And you can, of course, only do that if you have like some like baseline of features. I mean, yeah, sure. But then you really have to kind of become one of these big companies, don't you? Because only a big company has like the resources to actually like advertise its services. And I think Signal is the biggest example of this. And also with Signal, I think we can already see why this is a big problem. Because in the end, you again have a centralized company. Because you need a centralized company to run advertisement, to get users on the platform, to make this, well, not on the platform, but well, on the platform as well. I mean, you can, there's a one-to-one parallel to social media, but to get users on the messenger so more people will use it. And you cannot circumvent that. You need like some amount of resource centralization to be able to do stuff like that. And with that come the big problems that all the other big companies also have. And I think one of them is what we're seeing right now, state regulation with the EU chat control. That, and I mean, these laws will also apply to Signal. Of course, because Signal is huge, and I mean, yeah, Signal is very much mainstream at this point, I think. which doesn't make it like technically bad. It just means that in the end it will it will have to succumb to state regulation. So, and I think the actual solution to this problem is very simple, like conceptually, but very hard in reality. So it's easy in concept, but hard in execution. The solution is to just get people to, I don't want to say do what you say, but to share your worldview. This is what I mean. To get people to share your worldview. And I think you cannot do this really if you are, let me like share like kind of my experience. So if you are in a friends group and you're not really the center, you're not really the head, which you probably aren't if you're kind of like me. So you're kind of a like computer. I don't want to say computer person. That sounds too mainstreamy, but you know what I mean. You're not really the center of the room. And I don't mean to say become the center of the room, but rather what I say is to have people around you who, well, care about you, I guess. Even though that sounds kind of wholesome cringe, but you know what I mean, I hope. So people who actually care about what you think and what you want, and who share this view of the world you have, where you don't want to be surveilled by big companies. And they say, yeah, sure. And then they say, well, okay, do you have a solution? And you say, yeah, sure. Just download this I don't know, this xmpp app, and then just let me create you an account, and here we can message now. And they kind of get the point. And then they use that to message you, and you use it to message them back, because it's all really not that complicated. But this only works with like actual like human connection, I want to say, even though human connection is also another one of these kind of cringy terms. But yeah, but only cringy because it's overused and it's used by people who don't know anything about that stuff, I think. So yeah, I think that is really the solution. And when it comes to your friends, honestly, just, yeah, I mean, if they want to use like some normie thing where they're surveilled, like where all their messages are saved forever and analyzed, I mean, yeah, let them. But if you don't want to be part of that, then don't. And that's hard, I know. But just don't. Then just say, well, have fun. Good luck. And then you go and do your stuff. So, I mean, yeah, you may say this is a non-solution, but it is. It is a solution. Because this is not a technical problem, you see. Well, technical, at least not in a software sense. It's much more a social problem, I would say. And you can only solve this with like social measures, you could say. So yeah, I think the only solution is to do your thing and stand by what you believe and see and feel. And again, if you apply this to messengers, it just means, well, use your stuff with people who also care about that, and with the people who don't, then don't. Like if they are not willing to install a messenger app on their phone, like sorry, they don't care about communicating with you. That's just the reality of the situation. And if you care more about communicating with them than standing by what you believe and what you think is right, then I think, yeah, that's not a good situation. Because in the long run, this will kind of, at least for me, it has kind of, in some sense, I don't want to say burned out, because that's a very, very extreme like phrase, I think. But it just kind of sucks energy from you, is what I want to say. Because you're all the time in a like space, in a frame where you don't want to be. As in the space where where the people around you and you are using messengers which you know surveil you and store your messages and blah blah blah. So on and so forth. So yeah, again, I think the solution is just do your thing. Alright, so I think I'm just repeating myself at this point. I hope this kind of all made sense. I've tried to convey my thoughts as clear as I could. Again, this is not an easy like topic at all, but I think it really kind of shows you what's what. it shows you who sees the world as you do and who feels the world as you do, much more importantly, because again, everyone has an opinion nowadays, who cares? But it's really what you do that shows you, or who does what that shows you, again, what's what, and how people actually feel about things. And it's the same, and that's the last thing I want to say. It's the same with every aspect of this world, really. I mean, it's the same with like cash, as opposed to like electronic, like digital currency. If people don't care, or if people might say they care about cash and oh, it's so important and whatnot. Especially, I mean, this is a big point in Germany, I guess. They might say, well, it's so important and we need to sign this petition and whatnot. But if it then actually comes down to like day to day, like how they pay their stuff, well, they pay by card, because oh man, it's just more convenient and it doesn't really matter anyways. And yeah, so again, you can of course discuss this point whether it matters or not. I think this is like a different discussion. But yeah. Oh, by the way, I've written a lengthy article on my thoughts, or some thoughts on privacy, on my blog, on my website. I will link this in the description as always. If you care about it, you can read it there. I will maybe also make a few videos on like some points from that. Alright, that's it. Have a nice day.